that said and done, hoping that my lecture teaches you to appreciate people with disabilities, because we all have some, right? So what do you need to put in this project? A cover page, an opening page. So generally the opening page is, don't call it opening page, but it's a page in which you say, okay, this is what the class is about. A table of content, and then you have something called divider pages. I'll show you the divider pages in a minute. They're the pages in between. You'll have like different sections, right? Projects, exercises, design discussions. At the beginning of each of those sections, you have a page that summarizes what were those design discussions or what were those projects. Kind of an opening page that introduces what that section is about. And then you want to have, obviously, 3 projects, at least 1 or more pages each. So maybe in each project you have 2 pages. One for the process, in which you show the initial sketches, and you had the fact that you had 3 comps, and then you came up with one in the second page in which you show the finished sketch and the finished work, right? The finished results. And then you want to have an about me page, like a short bio, and then you want to have discussion pages, lecture. Those are optional because I'm asking for 5 of them. That is a lot, 5 discussion pages. But remember, your piece has to be at least 20 pages. My point is, you might decide, instead of putting the discussion pages, that you make the project pages beefier. So, or each project, instead of putting 1 or 2 pages, you might put 4. In that case, you will fill in the 20 pages with mostly the project and the exercises, and you don't have to worry about the discussion. Or you might say, you know what, I feel like this piece would be more complete and describe the class better if the discussion were there, so I'm going to use less, pages for the project. It's totally your discretion. Ultimately, you make your own destiny in terms of what do you want as the final piece. So now that you know what it needs to be in there, now you need to make sure you have only 2 type of fonts in there, and that means also font sizes. So don't go in one page and have font 36, and the second page font 18, and the third page the same exact font but 12. Don't have a million font sizes. Try to stick with 2 fonts maximum, maybe 1 for the title, 1 for the body of text, and try to keep consistent the sizing of the font, because it just keeps everything tidier. And I'll show you a few examples of student work, but even the example of the demo I did yesterday, in which everything looks very professional. I use minimum amount of color, minimum amount of fonts and stuff. So let's look at some of the project. I don't remember which one yesterday I thought was really a good idea. And we're going to look at it on Canvas. We're not going to download them and have all the interactivity. So this is one of the projects. So this is the main page, what you would call the home page, or in this the cover page for us up here. So you have a cover page that says process book and your name, and then you have a in between page that tells you this is a process book of what? Of Art 182. The name is Foundational Digital Art, and this is what it does. Then notice if I click on here, I can move through all the various pages, or I can go back to the beginning. Then you have table of content. Table of content shows you 3 sections. Likely, I wish that the student had put it down here. You notice when I mouse over here, means they're clickable. Means I can go to the various section. Likely our project, exercises, discussions, but I don't remember. Or maybe it's project and exercises and then about me. Again, this example teaches you, maybe you want to label it so that we know where we're going, right? And then I assume this is actually exercises, and you jump in exercises where it shows you all the exercises. Now, this student put exercises for each a week. Now you can decide to just put it for the one that to you were the most meaningful. I'm fine. As I said, you just have to fill 20 pages. You decide how to use those 20 pages wisely, right? And notice how there is a cohesive design, right? There's a very slick, very modern look. There are 2 colors so far, actually 1, really, yellow, because black and white are not colors. And here there is something that kind of always indicates in which page you are, how to go back to the beginning, and how to go to the next and the prior page. Everything always in the same place. There's no way you can get lost. That is cool. Now, what is missing in these pages? Look at this. What is missing on this page? Let's say I'm sent to this PDF because I'm hiring someone for an internship. I'm looking through this portfolio. I've been looking through 50 of them. I'm kind of tired, so I'm going to go make myself a tea. I make myself a tea, come back, and I say, but this student is really great. What's the name of the student again? Oops, right? Means it might be helpful somewhere, like in these two black lines that are going two directions. What I would have put here, very kind of subtle, is the name of the student and the contact info. They look like ideal places for that. Does it make sense? You kind of want to put it in every page because you never know. As I said, that person is looking at all these portfolio. There might be a certain point that they look at on one project and say, oh my gosh, this is so clever, such a good design. I gotta, would be a great candidate. Let me write the name down. Oops, where is the name? Do I have to go way all the way back to the first page? I guess so. But you want to make it easy on people. When I started working in web design 20 something years ago, and tells you how old I am, I remember there was this rule of the no more than 3 clicks. So even in super complicated a website like LucasArts, video games website that we were working on in this company, we could not anything you had to reach within 3 clicks, means even, no matter how deep you went into the navigation, because obviously there is primary navigation, secondary, tertiary, but at a certain point, if you went past 3 clicks, the boss was going to be really pissed with you. So you better behave, right? Type of thing. Anyway, but that was kind of a rule, not just with my boss, in the world of web design when web design started, actually. So obviously we have the lecture, so you can see that there is a list of projects right here. These are kind of these could be the divider pages. They could be actually the beginning of the project, but instead the student decided to put them one after the other and allow the person to go and navigate by clicking on these buttons. It's great. So here we are, then the exercise starts and it tells you what the exercise that you see is about. That is really nice. And now the visual identity has turned around, beautifully intelligent, but still the navigation stays the same, right? You have the arrows, you have the going back to the beginning and the page numbering. Then you have exercise 2 and 3, and you get the picture of how this goes. In a way, there is a sense of repetition that actually helps the person that is viewing this focus on the art and just read what it needs to be read. What I would have done is this font a little smaller. Do you see how if I look at this page and I ask you, which one is the primary, thing that you see? Do you first see the left or do you see the content here? Probably the left. Why? Because it's really solid, really big, it's screaming at you, right? So what I would have done here is in the interior pages is maybe made this yellow, like a pale yellow, made the exercise 10 a little bit smaller, shrink this to be much smaller so that these could be much bigger. My point is, also when you look at your page, ask yourself, does my work really shine? I mean, in this case, it's just an exercise, so it doesn't matter. But let's see, when we went to the project, did I already go through the project? I forget. All right, no, we started from exercises. So let's go to the project. Okay, project 1. So you see that this was actually a completely different project at the time. It was called an object 4 ways. So you found a natural object and you had to draw it in different styles. So these are the study sketches. And this is the final result. I do like that in the project, things were moved to the other side, so there is a little bit of variety, but there is still very much high consistency in the design. And I have to admit, I can see the project pretty well. The project is pretty nice. And then project 2 was, I think, the mascot that you guys did, but without the blending component. And that student decided to put on a backpack instead of a t-shirt. Now, when we talk about this piece, I want to tell you a lot of my students in the other class are struggling because what they did is they basically took this part that is vector and rasterized it to put it next to this part, right? I always tell people, try your best not to rasterize it because vector is so much better vector because it stays nice and crisp. So if you want to bring these two into the project, make them into 2 separate boxes, graphic boxes. In one, you bring in the AI file. And remember, in design, accept the AI and the PSD, no problem. And in this one, you put in the JPEG or whatever you downloaded. So you have 2 separate boxes. One is vector, one contains vector, one contains a bitmap. Now, I told you that InDesign accept vector, and that means AI and PSDs, no problem. But if your PSD is huge, let's say you did a beautiful poster for project 3 that has a ton of, let's say masks and adjustment layers, and you go and look at the file size of that PSD and is 50 megabytes or even 5 megabytes, then you should definitely do that optimization I taught you and make it into a JPEG or a PNG. Why? Because this is going to become a PDF that you want to email to people. And the bigger the files you popped in here, the bigger the PDF. So the vector, I never worry too much about because generally vector is pretty small because behind vector there are, what is vector? Equations, mathematical formulas, just, tiny little beautiful text that can changes when you scale thing based on, radius. It was 2, now I scale it double, becomes 4. Behind the scene is mainly math, right? But when we talk about bitmap, it's a different story. So whenever you have Photoshop, ask yourself, if you're popping into InDesign, should I maybe make sure that I get it smaller? Now smaller means JPEG, PNG, or GIF. But also smaller means whatever you bring into InDesign that is bitmap, even if you decide to bring a PSD, you still want to go open it up, do a save as, and then change it to be 72 ppi in resolution because you don't need it bigger. I mean, some people make it 144 if it at 72 feels really is falling apart. And then you want to definitely make it no more than 1,000 pixel in width, or 700 and something in height. Because remember, the resolution of the screen is 1024 by 768. So I always keep it 760 in height by 960 in width, just to make sure. Because if you make it any bigger, then you still have to scale it down inside of InDesign, but InDesign has to remember the big fat file size. Does it make sense? So project 2, and then this is project 3. That is a surreal collage. And then we have project 4, that is what, project 4, did they do for project that quarter? We used to have, one extra project in this class, but I confess. And this is, we changed it. We put one less because it felt already like crazy. Doesn't it feel already crazy with the project we have? Can you imagine squeezing in one more? Anyway, we were giving a lot less in design, and we were doing mostly a lot of technical, and I feel like the design is as important of the technical, especially at the basic level. Sorry, I want to make sure that is silence. So this is more the lectures, right? What are InDesign and Photoshop, and then graphic design theory and element using color. This is the equivalent of the discussions for you guys. And then there is the end. So this is a good example. I can show you many others, but the reason I wanted to show you one example is to show you that ultimately what are we doing in this class? We're doing something similar. Sorry, this is my dissertation. I'm going to close it. Sure, save it. And I'm going to open what I did yesterday and show you what ultimately we're going to do. Sorry, but in between I have opened a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. Okay, so this is what I created in class yesterday from scratch, and that's what we're going to do. Same story. We're going to have an opening page. Now, in my case, I don't have, obviously, images of my own projects or exercises and stuff. So because I do love robots, I collect robots, I decided to instead collect images online of robots and use those as a placeholder. But what I did here is I wanted to have 3 sections in my document, and I said, okay, I'm going to find 3 spectacular images. In your case, they might be images of your final project, or they might be, just like in the example with SAW, some really interesting graphic images that are quite abstract that lead you to the various sections of this piece. So that's page 1, and then if you go in page 2, you have the table of content. Now, I did not put, my fault, in fact, I should do it. I forgot to put the page about 182. What was that 182 about? So in here, and for the sake of now, forgive me, but what you would want to do here is, right here, say, 182, what's the name of this class? Digital Art Foundation. And now I don't want, and maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. And then below has a piece of text that's explain what Digital Art Foundation is, right? So right here, it would have kind of text or images from the class, but a brief description of the class would not hurt. So like something like, sorry for the font there, I did not really format it, but something that looks like this, and maybe has a few images of the class right below. Right here, explain what the class is, and here there are some example or not. But you do have to have this. Now notice that my navigation has arrow that takes you back and forth, and it has these kind of these basically section that you can go to. So what I created was cover page, kind of like intermediate page that talks about the class, table of content page in which I see the projects, the design lecture, the exercises, and the about me. And then if I click on this, it takes me to the project. That is what I start from. And this is the divider page for me for the project. It's a page is the beginning of my project in which it says, this is what project 1 was about, this is what project 2 was about, and this is what project 3 was about. Notice that every page has my name in there, my contact info, the navigation that takes me to all the beginning of every section, and obviously a linear way to see everything with the arrows. So I can see this project linearly by clicking click on this arrow, so I keep moving forward or backward, or I can jump around through this section through this navigation. Does it make sense? And then obviously I have project 1 in which I have a, and actually in project 1 you don't need the description if you have that, right? So what I could have is actually 3 images of project 1, like this, boom, and I'm going to center them a little better. Let me do this, let me move. Actually, I'm going to leave it for now. So then in project 1, you start having images of project 1, and then project 2, same story, and project 3. Then I go into design lecture. And here first, this is the kind of, in quote, divider page, in which I just simply specify what is in the design lecture. And imagine here you have week 1, 2, 3, and 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I specify each design lecture what is about. Like I put some placeholder for now. I forget what each week we covered. And then you go in and see, for example, the one that to you were more important, like the use of scale, and you have, a little blurb about, what does that design principle is about, and then a couple of images that demonstrate it, use of patterns, use of alignment. Then you jump into the exercises. And the exercises are week 1, 2, and 3. Same story of what I did with the discussion. I move it to the side, and here I populate it with more, columns. And you don't need to put exercises from each week. Maybe what you like is you list everything which week you like. Here you list everything. But then you go and say, hey, here is exercises week 1. Here week 4, and here week 8, because those weeks to me were really, really cool exercises. You don't have to put them all. It's up to you. Again, you have to fulfill 20 pages. You decide how. And in fact, the design discussion here, design lecture, you could, as I said, they're optional. You could skip it. Yes?
I missed this part. Do you want it horizontal or vertical?
Guess what? We're looking at it on a screen. You're super smart. Thank you. So always, actually, that's a brilliant question, though. Whenever you're producing anything, guys, think about that stuff. I mean, who is going to see it? Who's my audience? So beside how am I going to look at it? Is this going to be seen on a screen, or am I going to print it? Is it going to be in a book? How is it going to go? But also, who's my audience? Who's going to see this? And if you're applying to, for example, graphic design, internships, then you might want this to have also some kind of slick design feature, like the one we just saw from that student. If you're applying for a photography internship, who cares about having slick design, right? You just want to have your photos featured the best possible way. So your question is actually really smart, because it tells us it's not just about, okay, let's crank this work and get it done, but why don't we think about who I am and how do I represent myself well for the audience I'm sending it to, right? Because likely you will apply for internship and you could use this as a start. And then these are the exercises, and then obviously guess what? You have an About Me page. Again, all of it has always my name and the navigation. So that's kind of what we're going to build from scratch, guys. And obviously here, instead of having the images of the robots, you will have your images or something you come up with. So does anybody have any question of what is the ultimate goal of this? I'm going to stop the recording and use